Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another episode and another special guest. And Johann, I was just telling you before the episode, I'm changing things up a little bit with the introduction. So I read through your essay. That was a lot of the analogies that we're going to go back to and a lot of the questions that we're going to get through. And you described this iceberg theory of sort of your life and what you've gone through. So I'd like to kind of start with that analogy, what that actually means in your life. And then if you want to kind of introduce yourself through that would be great.
Amazing. First, thank you so much, Chad, for giving me the opportunity to be on your podcast. Regarding the iceberg, I think the analogy is more about who the people see right now. The person, Johann, the second year MBA candidate at Harvard Business School who realized his dream of working at his boyhood club at Chelsea Football Club, and who's pursuing, his career in the football industry. And the more nuanced version, that is concealed underneath it, everything that happened, throughout my life, how I made it to where I am today. And that's basically the analogy around, the iceberg. So going back to a bit of, context or background information about me, I was born in France, went back to Lebanon a couple of years later. My mother is French, my father is Lebanese. I grew up in Lebanon, basically between France and Lebanon, but mostly Lebanon. Went to high school there, university there. I played, football all my life. And yes, I'm going to call it football in your podcast. I'm going to call it soccer. And yeah, basically, so I've played football all my life, almost made it, pro in Lebanon, got a contract, wanted to be a professional football player. But then due to the landscape, the football landscape in the region, and especially in Lebanon, it's very, very poor landscape. So my father, basically, after multiple conversations with him, he talked me into, rejecting this contract and having a normal kind of career where you go to, undergrad, you do your undergrad, then work. And this heartbreak of mine, when I rejected this contract and, went to this American University of Beirut where I studied civil engineering, I continued playing football all my life. So I played in the second division then, and then I moved to Dubai to work in consulting, and I, played in the second division as well. I moved then to Madrid to work for Amazon, where I played for the fifth division there. So it was really jumping from one country to another, pursuing a career, but at the same time, in parallel, continuing this passion that I have for football. Up until one day I woke up in Madrid after 3 years of working there, and I'm like, my passion is football. I want to join my passion and profession together. What's the best way to do that? So I started having conversation with multiple people in the industry, in football industry and outside of this industry. And there was this one senior director at Man City who basically told me, listen, I'm not an MBA expert, but I do think that an MBA could help you pivot your career. And then I started looking for some MBAs, online. And then obviously I found HBS, Harvard Business School. And I'm like, that's the one. So I applied to only HBS. It was a risky move, but, I only wanted HBS. I applied to it with my whole application being around football, my different jumps from one country to another, from one league to another, and how I wanted basically with my short-term, mid-term, and long-term goal to work in the football industry. And yeah, I was super, super grateful, to get accepted. My first year basically at HBS was all about networking. Realized my dream of working at Chelsea last summer. And yeah, I'm graduating in a couple of months. Looking forward to next steps, basically.
Yeah, so much to break down and go through. I want to start off with right at the beginning. In your story, I remember hearing that your father and your family had a real specific point on he wanted to work as hard as he could so that he could give you the best life possible, and he saw that through education. So you ended up growing up in an environment where you were going to a very high-end institution at a private school, but you weren't necessarily coming from a similar background like the other kids. So I'd love for you to touch on that and what made, you mentioned the football field being an equalizer, where that was the first moment where you felt equal to everyone else, and then you could really thrive in that environment. I want to kind of touch base on both of those things.
Yeah, so going back, a couple of years earlier. So as I mentioned, I was born in France, then went back to Lebanon when I was 2 years old, 3 years old, something like that. And it was basically, my parents got a divorce. My mother decided to stay in France, and my father wanted to, come back to Lebanon with me and my brother, my father was 37 years old back then. I was 2 years old, and my brother was like 5. He went back, he wanted to start his life from scratch all over again. Also, a bit of context here. So my dad fled the civil war in Lebanon at the age of 18, and he went to France where he studied. He did his PhD in law. He passed the bar. He was a lawyer. He was, building the life that he really wanted. His dream life, working in France, and he was doing well financially, professionally, on all fronts. And then this happened, and then he wanted to go back to Lebanon and start everything from scratch. So he needed to pass the Lebanese bar. He wanted to teach in 3 different universities to make ends meet while working as a full-time lawyer. So all of that to basically continue the same life that he had built already in France, sorry. And first couple of years in Lebanon were tough, were very, very tough. So, starting your life all over with no money, no car, no house, nothing. He really relied a lot on his brothers and sisters. So I have 6, 7 aunts and uncles. And basically the first year and a half in Lebanon was moving from one house to another. We used to sleep at my aunt's house and then go to my other aunt's house and then my other uncle. And that was basically our life. And there was this particular moment when I remember I was, 2 years old, 3 years old at the time. And I remember I felt super proud that we owned all these houses. I used to believe that all these houses were ours, little did I know that, we were just moving from one house to another because we didn't have any house. Anyways, my father worked a lot, like 3 full-time jobs at the same time, all of that, and keeping education in mind, it's one of the most important things in life. And he knew the importance of it in our long-term life. So he enrolled us in a private French school in Lebanon, which was very, very expensive, the tuition. And so basically he wanted us, to go to that high school. Now, the problem with that is that private French school in Lebanon equals, very wealthy families. I couldn't keep up with the private, standards of living. I had the same worn out counterfeit shoes, the same backpack, the same clothes even. I couldn't even go to birthday parties because literally my dad told me we cannot afford buying gifts to your friends. Like, we're not going to show up without a gift. So it was that was the vibe, on Christmas, for example, it was never about, what did I get for Christmas? It was about, did I get anything for Christmas? And there was this particular picture that I have where I was opening a Christmas gift on the floor. So after 2, 3 years of moving from one house to another, we eventually moved to a house with, an apartment where my father rented out. And yeah, it was me opening this Christmas gift on the floor because we didn't have a couch back then. And it's such a powerful, picture, because now when I see where I am today versus where I was a couple of years earlier, it's just insane. It's just crazy. And it kept, at school, I was, I think consistently on the bottom of my class. I didn't get good grades the first couple of years at least, because I was always alone. I didn't have friends. I wasn't really integrated. I didn't feel included. I wasn't invited to any birthday parties, whatever, because at some point, my friends just, inviting me to one event after another, and I'm canceling and rejecting every single event. So then my friends wouldn't invite me anymore. So yeah, it was a bit tough. And then at the age of 10, something like that, 10, 11, I joined the football varsity team in my high school. And then everything changed. So I was very, very good. I think among the best, and everyone suddenly wanted to be my friend. Everyone suddenly wanted to be on my team. Everyone suddenly wanted to cheer for me. And this was a feeling, that I felt a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but then I got used to it and I got, more and more friends. And it's just impressive how the pictures that I, went through of my childhood were me, playing alone, being alone in the playground, same backpack, same counterfeit shoes, whatever. And then you start seeing pictures, me in different teams, in different jerseys, but one thing in common: football. All the time, it's football, football, football. So now I was invited to all these football events where literally my friends used to come pick me up from my apartment for me to attend that event, so that they don't, bother my father, who was working like 3, 4 full-time jobs. And this helped a lot. And yeah, eventually I was named team captain. I kept the armband for like 8, 9 years until I graduated basically from high school. And this changed my life 180 degree.
And if we get into, I almost look at your life like in stages. So you have that stage pre finding football is like that passion and that resource for you to show others like, okay, I have this ability, I have this talent in leadership and all these different things. So you have stage one, then you have stage two of like finding football and what you're saying there, starting to integrate with people again, finding friend groups, finding different families that are willing to come and support you. And then you have stage three, where you almost reset again. You get up to the opportunity of wanting to play pro, then you get the opportunity of playing pro, and then like everything comes crumbling back down again. So can you talk us through that moment of there's very few people I would say that get the opportunity to play pro and then actually decline that option and choose another route. So talk me through the decision making, the influence of your family in that situation and the environment. People don't understand, I would say for the most part, our audience won't understand what growing up in Lebanon is like, what the footballing culture is like, what the economy is like there. If you could break that all down for us, and then we'll continue on with your journey.
For sure. So to go back, to that moment. So from the age of 16 till 18, I used to play with the under 20s, basically, of the champions of the first division in Lebanon. And yeah, from 16 to 18, it was basically paying for free, just, for me to train. And they used to pay us like transportation and stuff like that, like very little money. But then when I got to 18, because I'm born in on the 25th of January, so at the beginning of the year. So I got 18. I turned 18 very early on, and I still had like a year for me to graduate from high school. But I kept playing with them, and at the age of 18, they gave me this professional contract where I was determined that okay, this is what I want to do. Football changed my life, absolutely changed my life, and I want to play football. This is everything I know. This is what I know how to do, and this is what I love to do in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, like whenever. And yeah, so the conversation with my dad was a bit tough because, as I mentioned, we had a rough beginning. By the age of 18, my like when I was 18, my dad got remarried again to my stepmother, got me two baby sisters, so the family grew. He was doing better financially, but we were still in a soft spot, like it wasn't we weren't really living comfortably. I still had to work on, my own small gigs here and there to make ends meet, to make money, basically my pocket money. My brother, it was
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same. So we weren't in a very comfortable spot. And then my dad basically told me, listen, you know how much we suffered, in your early childhood, basically. We're still, again, now, like, we're not super comfortable. I don't personally think that going into this route would secure you, a good future. Looking back now, back then, obviously, I was devastated. I trust my dad fully, 100%, like for everything he's done, in my life. He's my hero. He's my idol. And when he told me this, I was like, it was the first time I actually started thinking of challenging a bit what he's saying, because it was such a past, such a dream for me, that I want to do it, and I made it, and I got the professional contract and everything. But at the same time, I trust him fully. And back then, I trusted him fully as well. I was like, he knows better. He knows better. He's been there. He went to France, he came back to Lebanon. He must know something that I don't. And I trusted him on that. I'm like, you know what? And back then as well, like as I mentioned before, football changed my life 180 degrees in high school, because the minute I was named team captain and I was very fully integrated into, the student life in high school, I was consistently, in the top 5%, let's say, of my class. So I got the good grades,
Interesting.
yeah, I got the good grades. I got, the backup from my professors. Everyone was like suddenly, oh wow, okay, this guy, he can go places, all these talks. And so that's also another argument that my dad used to convince me to let go of this, professional contract. He told me, listen, you have very good grades. Go do, engineering or a doctor or lawyer or something like that, like the very traditional thinking of a Middle Eastern parent, basically. But then I'm like, you know what? I trust him. Let me go do, engineering school at the American University of Beirut, which is one of the, best universities in the region. And in parallel, I'm going to keep playing in a second division team in Lebanon, and we'll see where this will take me. To give a bit more context on Lebanon I mean, Lebanon in general, it's not a very strong economy, I would say. You have a lot of disparity between, the different social classes, in the low income, mid income, and high income. And yeah, more context about the football landscape in Lebanon. It's not that developed. Okay. Pitches are not developed enough. Even back then, you would see as well, like I was, 17, 18 at the time.
Hmm.
And the captain on the team who was like 30 something, his salary was like $4,000 per month, $4,000, something like that. Like you cannot really make it with that salary. And that was the captain of the team, 34, 35 years old, And these were also like arguments that my dad used to, tell me about. Like, listen, these are the facts, it's not a personal opinion, it's literally facts. And this is when I'm like, okay, you know what? I trust him. Let me go do my engineering school while playing, football in second division, and we'll see what happens.
So while we're on the topic of, I guess you could say, setbacks, the next thing that I found really fascinating was pre going into Harvard, you tried building two different businesses. So one was, I believe, in healthcare and wellness, or one in healthcare, one in wellness. I love really deep diving into, because I think now you can look back at that and there's so much insight, similar to what you were saying with the decision between going to play professional football and then moving on and going on and with what you did. You can kind of really start to dissect, okay, why did I make that decision? Was it beneficial? How did I do it? And then you can learn for the future of future decisions. So with these two businesses, can you give us like a brief understanding of why you went into them, kind of what the inspiration was, what went wrong, and how did you learn and develop through them? I always really like the insight behind that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I joined the American University of Beirut Engineering School, civil engineering, very, very tough, undergrad, to study. However, I still got good grades, but I didn't really like what I was doing. I did I think in my first year, I did an internship in Qatar where I was on the site, typical civil engineering work, and I absolutely hated it. I'm like, this is not what I want to do in life. This is not me. I'm not made to do this kind of work. And this is where I started looking more on the business side. And also something that helped me, think about business all the time is growing up in a low income household where I really needed to come up with ways to, to get money basically for my pocket money to go out with friends, whatever, like stuff like that. And so I was always business oriented in my life. And after graduating from high school, I, went to the American University of Beirut. First year, did this internship, realized, okay, this is not what I want to do. However, I continued with this diploma because it's one of the most prestigious, let's say, diploma to have in the region. And, again, I had good grades in engineering school, but, I didn't really like it. So this is when I said, okay, you know what? I took this course. I don't remember the exact, title of the course, but it was something about engineering entrepreneurship. And I formed this team with two or three brilliant people back then in my class, where we were very passionate about Lebanon. We wanted to give back to Lebanon. We wanted to change some sort of way Lebanon, and we decided to get into healthcare. And then we came up with the idea. We pitched it to so many people up until from one person to another. We got to the Minister of Health back then. And he absolutely loved the idea. He said, listen, you're a bunch of 18 years old trying to change Lebanon, give back to the country, coming up with this, innovative application, which was basically a health book, but in an application form. So you get it on your phone instead of getting it in the hard copy, we start introducing blockchain. Back then it was a big thing, how to have encrypted, data, stuff like that. And it started gaining traction, like very, very serious traction. We worked on it, I think, a year, going back and forth to the Ministry of Health, working very closely with the team there. And then at some point there was a political, change with the ministers. And basically that minister got replaced. He stepped down, and then there was another minister who got in, and that minister wasn't very enthusiastic into, the idea of like a bunch of 18 years old changing the healthcare system. And basically we got kicked out. So we started trying to see how we can revive it, maybe sell the application, because we've been working on it for a long time. And, there was no buyers basically, and it failed. So that was the first one. It was a setback for sure, but also it was my first time, getting a feel of, I'm an entrepreneur, how to navigate the constant problems that you get every single day in entrepreneurial world. And it kept like the flair inside of me that I wanted to do that again. I don't know where, I don't know which industry, what would I want to do, what would I want to solve. But I had this idea that I really wanted to do that again. After engineering school, I went into consulting. And consulting, is very, very tough. Long hours, a bit of a toxic environment. However, I absolutely loved it. The exposure you get to present to C-suite. All of a sudden, you're 22, 23 old. You work with one of the smartest people I've met. You learn a lot. Like the learning curve is exponential. And then I'm like one of my best friends who also was with me in engineering school and then, in consulting, but in another firm. We sat down together and we're like, we want to do something on the side while you're working in consulting, work on our own, startup. And if, it picks up, maybe we'll go do that on a full-time basis. And we came up with this idea, which was basically Uber for wellness services. So you could order from wherever you are. You could order, a wellness practitioner that could come to you and, do your pedicure or manicure or, even maybe, a haircut or a massage or something like that. Like there was a lot of services that we would provide. And it picked up well. It worked well. I worked on it for a couple of months, I think like 9-10 months, almost a year. We started generating money. It was incredible. And this is when me and my best friend were looking at each other and was like, okay, this is like our exit opportunity. We worked 3 years in consulting. It's been amazing. But now we have this thing that, is going well. We're generating money, generating profits. And we absolutely love the entrepreneurship, world.
Mm-hmm.
Then COVID hit. And then, everything was closed. We started to pilot the idea in Saudi Arabia, which was working super well. And then, COVID hits, everything, is in lockdown. Wellness practitioners were not allowed to, move in from one place to another. And basically we had to shut down. We were losing money month over month. And then we decided, this painful decision to just abort everything, cut our losses and basically, say, okay, it was a great journey. However, now it's time to, close it and move on to the next business idea, basically. That's basically the whole story behind both startups.
And how did you process failure at the time? So I listened to My First Million as a podcast with Sean Puri and Sam Parr, and Sean talks about how like every time he failed at a business, he got like a little bit excited at the end because he's like, okay, I'm like one business closer to getting successful. And I think it took him like 8 or 9 of his own entrepreneurial like businesses that he actually had built up to eventually having one to succeed at least a little bit. How did you process it at the time? Was it like a deep depression after, or you were just struggling for months, or was it something where you're like, hey, you know what, we learned this much, we can kind of step up and do something better on the next one?
I think on the healthcare startup, yes, I was devastated. I was 19 years old, starting to get like featured in articles in the newspapers and magazines, and we had our own office in the Ministry of Health. It was crazy to me. I was like, what is happening? So I was very, 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 very disappointed. It took me a couple of months to, get back to having this enthusiasm and, this hunger of believing in startups again. The second one, I believe it's just, no, I was more mature, one. And then two, I think I was older. I was like 24 at the time, 23 at the time. I was, working well, in consulting. I had already like a plan B set, it wasn't, the startup itself wasn't a plan A, it was a plan B. Because I was a full-time, consultant, and on the side I was working on the startup. So it didn't really feel as big of a disappointment as the first one. But I fully agree with what you said. It's just one failure after the other. For normal people, on average, I think the average person would get disappointed and more devastated as the failures come. For me, I think it was on the contrary. It was, okay, it didn't work out the first time. It didn't work out the second time. Maybe it's going to work out the third time. Maybe not. Maybe the fourth time, the fifth time. But I have this obsession that I want to make it work. And I'm even now, like, I don't have a startup, right? I'm not working on a startup. I don't have an idea, but I'm 100% sure that in my lifetime, I'm going to go back to, the entrepreneurial world, come up with a startup, and then I'm come back to this podcast and tell you all about it.
It's kind of, you got to be like a little bit psychotic. You got to, like, even for myself, like in the content side of things, Mr. Beast has some incredible points on content and just building businesses. And so I sort of have like this 4 to 8 year mindset where I know it's going to take me around 8 years to like really make it in content. But most people, like, I think they would like call you psychotic for that, because you're like, why would you wait 8 years for something to happen? But I think that's almost the mentality you have to have. Like, oh, I'll fail 10 more times. It's fine. Like, I know I'm going to get it one day. Like, it's going to work out. And I think that's sort of the mindset
100%.
that I think you have as well.
100%, 100%. And this applies to every decision I made in my life. Even the one, when I was working in consulting, I was making a lot of money, I was super happy, and then I decided suddenly, and they gave me a sponsorship as well to go do my MBA. They'll pay for it, and then I'll come back. But then I'm like, this is not what I want to do. I want to move to Europe and work in big tech. And the moment I just, told my surrounding, my friends, my families, my colleagues, everyone around me that I want to do that, everyone looked at me like, you're an idiot. You're stupid. You're working in Dubai, making a lot of money, untaxed, living life, growing very rapidly in consulting. Why the hell would you want to go to Europe, pay taxes, get a pay cut in your salary, work for big tech where, the progression isn't as quick as in consulting? But I don't know. I just felt something inside telling me you need to do that. That's the right move for you. And despite, every single person in my life telling me that's a bad move, I did it. And now looking back, it's one of the best moves I made in my life. And this also applies to every other decision I had. So after Amazon, when I decided to apply for MBA, it was exactly the same arguments. You're a senior territory manager in Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the world, living in Madrid, the best city in the world. You're playing in the 5th division club in Madrid. You're very happy, Why the hell would you want to move to the US and go pay money to do an MBA, which is extremely expensive? Don't work for 2 years. They didn't really get it. And then I'm like, okay, I want to apply. I feel like this is the right decision for me. This is the right move for me. I'm still going to do it. I did it. And at the beginning as well, like a lot of people were telling me, okay, it's crazy. You want to go to Harvard? I mean, who do you think you are? Like Harvard? Like, yeah, Harvard. And then they're like, okay, wouldn't you apply to other MBAs in parallel? Like just for you to have a plan B, a C, D, like don't just apply to Harvard. I'm like, no, I'm only going to apply to Harvard. This is the only university I would go do my MBA at. And, thankfully it worked out, and it's literally the best decision of my life. It changed my life 180 degree.
Yeah, you changed, you transitioned into the next question perfectly there. I was going to say, like, the amount of self-belief that someone has to not only just apply to Harvard, but then apply to Harvard and only Harvard is something like crazy, that we're kind of this mentality that we're talking about. So what was like, talk us through the kind of mentality. You don't want to apply to any other schools. Was there like okay, if I don't get in, I'll just continue doing what I'm doing? Or was it really just like, no, I know I'm going to get in here. This is my next step.
So I had a couple of plan Bs and Cs in mind, but, I was only focused on having a concrete plan A, because I believe when you have an objective and you want to reach it, if you have a plan B, this will remove a bit from your craziness or this obsession that you have over this plan A. So that's why I'd rather, in every decision I made, I never applied to several jobs in parallel, which, some people might say, it's a dumb way of doing things, because you're not hedging your risks there. But for me, it's just, if you have a plan A and you go all in, you want to make it happen. I believe having a plan B can be, a bit of can slow you down, I would say, because in the back of your mind, you're always, okay, I have a plan B, whatever. If you don't have any other plan, you're just going all in and putting all your effort. You're not giving 100%, you're giving 150% of yourself. During the application process for when I was applying for Harvard, also, like I had, my mentor, who is like one of my best friends, and he did, Harvard Business School before, kind of a similar path as me. Like he went to UB, did, a couple of years in consulting, went to HBS, then worked at big tech. And he helped me a lot. Like his support was, invaluable for me. However, at the end of the application process, and when I was about to apply to submit, my application, he told me, listen, I think your application is too focused on football. You're only talking basically in your HBS essay about football, 2-3 lines about what you worked. You worked in consulting, you worked in Amazon. He told me, like, he thinks it's a risky move. However, it's my risk to take, you know? So I thought about it a lot, a couple of days, asked around some people, friends, family, whatever. And also a lot of people told me, listen, you're applying to Harvard Business School. You're not applying to a football academy. It's a very different, audience here. I, their advice, the trend was like, you know, change a bit, talk about football, but it should be central around your career, what you did in Amazon, what you did in consulting, your startups. And I didn't really feel like I wanted to mention this extensively. And again, about this gut feeling that I have inside, I was like, no, I'm gonna apply only to HBS with this story, which is the perfect, authentic way of showing my true self. If they accept me, very good. If they don't accept me, fine. That's me. I'm not gonna change for anyone or for any institution or for anything. And yeah, again, like it turned out to be the right decision because it's exactly what I envisioned. I am here on campus, the football guy. I organize these talks and whatever. So I stay true to myself. And I think this is the key for success. Like if there's one take that I got from these 2 years at HBS is that if you really stick to your true authentic self, success will come, alone without you, pursuing it or chasing success or whatever.
I think it's relatable. I know I keep relating it to the content side of things, but people sometimes go out there and they're like, okay, I'll make content on this, on this, on this, on this, like trying to find someone where that's interested in their content. But if you just stick to what you love, the audience will find you. People will find you that are attracted to the similar things as you. I think that's key. I want to get into goal setting. This next part of your application, you laid out like a short-term vision of what you had in mind for your time at HBS. And part of the vision was you wanted to join a top club like Real Madrid, Man City. You named quite a few in there, and learn the ins and outs of management, how to work within an environment in that. And you ended up going out and then working with Chelsea. Talk to me throughout your like goal setting. Like we've spoken about through a few of these different parts of your journey. How do you set your goals? How do you like plan to accomplish them? I'm curious how your like mind works around goal setting.
So goal setting is everything for me. In my day to day life, if you see my calendar, for example, every single day there's like blocks and blocks that I put in to basically achieve what I want to achieve on a daily basis. Okay, so for example, this week I have weekly goals, daily goals, monthly goals that I set all the time. And also there's this funny story that I tell everyone here. So when I got accepted to HBS, I was on a plane from Madrid to Boston when I was about to start my MBA. And I remember on that plane, it's like a 7-hour flight. I watched the couple of episodes. I read a bit, my book that I was reading. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pick up my laptop, open a new note, and just write a set of goals that I want to achieve in this 2-year MBA. And it's crazy to think about right now because I was looking at this list a couple of weeks ago, and I truly achieved everything on that list, from crazy ideas to small ideas, just like everything I could think about, brainstorming, all by myself, putting my music and just putting in whatever I thought about. For example, I don't know, work at Chelsea. I'm a Chelsea fan since I was 5 years old. I would have never imagined one day that I'm going to be working at Chelsea Football Club. And I set it up. It was literally the first objective out of these 2 years. Like, I'm on a mission. I'm going there at HBS. It's a 2-year program. I'm investing so much time, effort, money in this. The least I could do is just come up with a list of objectives and achieve them after these 2 years. Number one was, working at Chelsea. Number two, I think, was getting, meeting or working. I remember I wrote it, meeting / working with football players, which today, it's crazy to think about, but it's also like I'm very close to some football players. I think we'll get to that later on. Also, we have this newspaper here to tell you just the level of this goals, basically, of these objectives. From the biggest goals of working at Chelsea, meeting and working with players, to even the smallest details, which was, for example, I knew that there was a newspaper here at HBS, and I always thought it would be super cool, to feature in this newspaper at least once, and maybe let's go even crazier and be on the front page of this newspaper. This newspaper is delivered to all of the Harvard schools, so the business school, the law school, the medical school, whatever, you name it. And I had it in one of my objectives in my list. And it's such a small detail, but it happened. And it's just something that, from the smallest points to the biggest points, just setting your goals. I think it's a life changing thing. And, it's just now a habit of mine. As I mentioned before, like I have daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals that I just put in my calendar. And it keeps me focused, if you want. Every single day when I wake up in the morning, check my calendar. Okay, what's the goal for today? Ta ta ta. Okay, so now I have it in my mind, in the back of my mind. I go about my day, just like any other person, but having this goal in the back of my mind that this is what I want to achieve before I go back to bed. And that's basically how I go about my life on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. This is what I do.
Jesse Itzler, he talks about setting goals in a misogi. It's a Japanese term, and it's basically having this goal where you only have the most percentage you can have is a 50% chance of completing it, and that's I would say 50% for you would be like some of those goals. You think flying over the plane, okay, I'm going to work with Chelsea. Like at that moment, the odds of actually working for Chelsea are so low. Even though you're going to HBS, you're doing all these things, getting featured in the paper, all these little things. Like those are some like how do you conceptualize those goals? Because sometimes like it's easy to set a goal like, okay, if we're doing this podcast here, I hope to get X amount of views because I'm a podcaster. But your goal is almost setting it like, okay, I'm going to get a Netflix show that becomes a world bestseller. Like that's sort of the concept that you have in mind. How do you push past those boundaries of like what a human mind can normally just comprehend? Does that make sense? I don't know if that's
It makes 100%. Like I totally agree with everything you said, and it's just okay. So if I want to summarize all of this, is that you need to be obsessed with with your vision, with your goals, with whatever you have in mind, and this obsession is extremely difficult to have as a mindset. Coming to HBS, okay, every single person that I met here told me, okay, what's your background? You worked in consulting before. You worked in Amazon before. Okay, so you have, consulting, check. Big tech, check. Next, logical step for you would be to work in PE or in VC or in investment banking or something finance related. And every single person I met looked at me saying, that would be your next logical step, right? Like working in New York for a big bank or a big PE firm or whatever. I'm like, no, I want to work in soccer. And every single person looked at me, smiled, laughed, whatever. And then like, no, but seriously, like, what do you really want to do? I'm like, I want to work in soccer. Like, I swear, guys, I came to HBS to work in soccer. Yeah. And this, the ability to tell people I want to work in soccer, especially here at HBS, like very fully driven, people, type A people that want to get into, Wall Street, all this stuff. It was extremely difficult to keep a straight face while telling them, yes, I want to work in soccer. And I'm like, okay, but like, what do you want to do in soccer? Like, do you want to be a player? Do you want to be a coach? I'm like, no. In soccer, there's two worlds basically: the sports world, and then there's a thick wall, and there's the commercial side, the CEOs, the CFOs, the CMOs, the chief revenue officer, whatever. This is what I want to do. Okay, and what's your midterm goal? Like in 5-10 years, what do you want to do? I want to work at a club, hopefully as a C-suite, CEO, chief revenue officer, whatever it is. Okay, and then do what? Then, manage the club, and in 10-year time, to understand the inside outs of a club. Maybe in 10 years, I want to, come up with my own academy back in the Middle East. Okay, and then what? And then maybe like in 20, 30 years, the goal would be to own a club. And then every single person would look at me and said, you want to own a club? Like, yes, I want to own a club. And it's exactly the same feeling that I got when I mentioned to people that I want to apply to Harvard. Everyone was looking at me like, Harvard? Don't you want to go to the moon as well? I'm like, yeah, I mean, you have to put these very, very big targets. Same conversation I had when I was moving from consulting to Amazon. I'm like, yeah, I want to work in big tech in Madrid. Okay, which company? Amazon. Amazon, do you want to go to Amazon? Like, you're never going to be accepted to Amazon. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. I'm going to work on it. That's my objective. I'm going to set, the small goals to reach the final big picture that I want. And it has always been consistent, exactly the same throughout my life. And that's why, again, going back to how I set my goals and why do I do that and how to stay focused, on them, it's just being obsessed. My girlfriend, mentioned this a couple of times to me, especially when I was working on my application. So this HBS essay that I worked on for, I think, 3 months, at the end, I was like version 37, basically, when I applied. And she literally, this was the first time she mentioned it. And I think I told her, even until today, I tell her this is the best compliment you can ever give me, which was, you are too obsessed with your goals. And I absolutely love it because this, stayed with me up until today. When I got to HBS telling people I want to work in soccer, everyone was like, yeah, okay, fine. Okay. Everyone has these dreams. Nobody really follows up with it. And everyone saw how obsessed I was with LinkedIn, reaching out to people, organizing these talks. Like, everyone looks at me and like, why are you not, like, just chilling, go to your classes, work on your side thing, your startup, your whatever, travel a lot. And I said, like, guys, I'm doing this. I'm literally president of 3 clubs here at HBS. I'm traveling all the time. Very rarely I stay here in Boston, but also I'm too obsessed to just, you know, be normal. I wanted to take it to the next step and investing a lot of time, effort, and money in this. Like, I want to go out of HBS looking back at this list of objectives that I came up with and seeing, okay, yeah, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. I accomplished all of these. I'm very happy with, what I did. And I think it's just like my way of life, of being too obsessed, like putting this vision, obsessing over it, and just making it happen.
I want to the next sort of stage, which we connected with really well when we first had our call, was your application process to actually getting into Chelsea and working with them. I related it to it on so many different levels, and I love the story behind it. So talk me through that moment of looking, okay, hey, I want to get an internship for the summer, and kind of the process leading up to that. If you could share that, that would be wonderful.
It's also a crazy, crazy story. So, again, got to HBS my first week, telling people, in my section, my class, whatever, like, I want to work in soccer, getting this and starting getting better at keeping a straight face, when telling people I want to work in soccer. First week at HBS, I opened LinkedIn and I started obsessing over LinkedIn. Couple of weeks ago, no, I think last week, I did a talk for a newly admitted student here at HBS. And I literally went on LinkedIn and counted how many connection requests, how many cold messages I sent to people in a European soccer club. Whatever the seniority is, whatever the functional job is, whatever the position, I didn't really care. I would literally go on LinkedIn, type in Chelsea as employer, every single person I could find on LinkedIn, connection, 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 connection. When I got and sending a note as well with the connection request. And every single time I got an acceptance for this connection request, I would send a follow-up message. Hey, this is my CV. My name is Johann. I'm a first year MBA student. I want to work in football. I would love to have 10, 15 minutes with you. Then I would have the call, whether that's with the CEO or the senior manager or the new joiner or the intern, whatever it is, just having conversation with people to understand better how clubs are organized, what's the hierarchy inside these clubs, because it's very different from consulting or Amazon. It's extremely, extremely different. And so my first week, I remember I was like, okay, let me be as crazy as I think I am and talk to every person at Chelsea. And I talked to maybe 76, 77 people at Chelsea, from the CFO to the CEO to the chief marketing officer, to whatever, like literally every single person I could find on LinkedIn. And I did that with a lot of other European clubs. So the first offer actually I got was not from Chelsea. It was from Bayer Leverkusen. I was also, like, back then, Bayer Leverkusen was, on the way to being, German champions. And I thought, you know what, let me try reaching out to people from Bayer Leverkusen. I did exactly the same. Employer, Bayer Leverkusen, started sending requests, got on a call with, a director of innovation, director of innovation. And he told me basically, okay, it would be amazing. Let's start with the interview process. I'm like, okay. And so I did like 4 interviews, I think, with him and with other people in the team. And at the end, I got the offer. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to continue applying to other clubs. The next club I got an offer from was PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. And I remember when I got it, I did like five interviews with them. And when I got this offer, done. Everyone in my family, my friends, everyone, half of my family lives in Paris, and my brother lives in Paris. And back then, in the summer there was the Olympics happening there, so every single person would tell me, "That's the one." Like you got this offer, your family is there. There's the Olympics. You're working with the chief digital officer, who is an amazing person. I was super super excited for it. And back then, I was in Japan with a bunch of Harvard people. And again, going back to this obsession. So I got the offer in the second week of May to start in the first week of June for a 3-month period, literally 2 weeks before starting. And back then, I was celebrating with everyone. I got the PSG offer. So I declined eventually the Leverkusen offer, and I was set, to sign the contract with PSG. And back then I was with my girlfriend in Japan, celebrating and everything. And I told her, you know what? I talked to so many people at Chelsea that I have nothing to lose. Let me, send one last message to the chief marketing officer, who back then, I sent 12 messages from September till May. Every 2-3 weeks, sorry, I would send her an update like, hey, it's me again. Just wanted to check, if you have any updates on your end, whatever. And she would reply maybe every 5-6 messages I would send her. She would reply once, and not really saying much, like just asking me more questions. Up until, when I was in Japan, 2 weeks before starting, the internship, I looked at my girlfriend back then. I told her, you know what? I'm going to send her a message. Just one last message, the 13th message on LinkedIn, just to see. I have nothing to lose. I have 2 offers. If she says, okay, great. If not, then I would have literally given everything. And I remember that day we went back from a party, basically. It was 2 a.m., I think, in Japan, or something like that, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Went back to the hotel and told my girlfriend, listen, I'm going to send her one last message to see what she says. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine, but don't really she was trying to manage my expectations. And I sent her one last message. Told her, hey Claire, it's me again. I'm just trying to see if there's a possibility for me to have a call with you, just to understand if it's possible for me to work with you at Chelsea during the summer. And I have these 2 offers from Leverkusen and PSG, and I completely understand if you're not gonna, if you don't reply, but I need to, figure out what I'm doing in the next 2 weeks, literally. And she replied after 7 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. It was back then 2:30 a.m. And she's like, okay, are you available for a call right now? Like an interview with me. And then my girlfriend looks at me and says, please don't tell me you're going to accept this. Please don't tell me you're going to go on a call at 2:30 a.m. after partying the whole night, whatever. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. Do you think I'm going to reschedule? It's so tough to get 10 minutes with her, let alone an interview. So here I was, in Japan, Tokyo, at 2:30 a.m. having this interview with her. Yeah, it was like an hour and a half, something like that call, where we talked about a lot of stuff. The next day we did a follow-up interview again, and then she was like, okay, hired, done. See you next week. Are you sure? Should I reject the other offers, or well, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, for sure. No, I'm giving you my word, done. We'll do all the paperwork and whatever later. And it was literally, I remember in her email when she was giving me the offer, the title, what am I going to do, the project I'm going to work on, everything. She was like, see you next week. And I literally read that email. I showed it to my girlfriend. I was like, isn't this crazy? It's insane. Then yeah, went back on a call with PSG, told them about the whole situation. I'm very sorry. I rejected the offer. The following week I was at Chelsea. And I think also the chief marketing officer at Chelsea put it in a beautiful way. She said, you are the example of polite persistence, which summarizes the whole thing. I mean, 13 messages from September till May, while being in Japan, the other side of the world, and getting that email, it was just like a dream come true.
It's making me. And then didn't you walked into the Chelsea office and everyone else recognized you because you had meetings with all of them?
100%. So the first day, actually, when I stepped in, went to Stamford Bridge. So the offices are in Stamford Bridge. And I've been to Stamford Bridge for 6-7 times to watch games. And it was the first time, when I got there and I looked at the stadium, I was like, man, I'm actually an employee. Like, it's the first time I take the exact same route, stop at this metro station, go to the stadium, but this time as an employee. And this is when it hit me, I got super emotional, obviously I was like, wow, this is insane. And then I, took the elevator, went for like, a short introduction with the CMO. And then she started taking me from one person to another to introduce me basically. And I remember there was a funny encounter with the CFO back then who looked at me and said, I know you from somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. He's like, yeah, you're the LinkedIn guy. Yeah, now I remember. I'm like, yeah, I'm the LinkedIn guy, Went to the CEO, went to the chief revenue officer, exactly the same conversation. So that was a bit, the funny part of starting at Chelsea, where I was literally named the LinkedIn guy.
The last point I wanted to break down here, I know we're running on to almost an hour here, but I wanted to quickly touch on all these people that you have met. So obviously working with Anita in Harvard is quite a name in terms of the sporting industry and education, a phenomenal figure. You've welcomed, I think on my Instagram, talking about Instagram now, every time I see your story, you're always with Toto Wolff or Sefrin was at Harvard not too long ago. You're always bringing in these new figures to come and either speak at Harvard, or you're working with guys like John Terry and so on. Can you talk to me about these figures and what really stands out to them at like an elite level? Like, these people have got to these positions due to something. They're not just another random person that just happened to get lucky and make it somewhere. They've actually put time and effort into really building up, whether it's their network or their education or their experience, whatever that is. What is the thing that really like stands out to you about these people?
Number one and hands down is their curiosity. So one would think that, okay, they achieved a lot of stuff in their lives, they're super wealthy, they have all this power and fame and whatever. Why would they come to Boston from Europe, from wherever they are, to speak, to talk to MBA students at Harvard, right? Like, it just didn't make sense to me at the beginning. But then I was super positively surprised as how they're super curious to come here, have chats with MBA students at Harvard, be more involved in the Harvard community, try to see what's the next big thing, that people are working on right now in the tech industry and finance and whatever industry. And it's just crazy to see how curious they are. So the three people, and again, I've met a lot of football players, by now, the three that really stand out on that point are John Terry, extremely curious guy, super smart. DJ Drogba, extremely smart guy, and Giorgio Chiellini. Giorgio Chiellini is one of the most impressive people I've met, because again, Juventus legend, Italian legend. You would assume that, okay, now he's just chilling, investing here and there his money, but living a comfortable life. He got a master's degree during his playing time. He's extremely curious to see how he can get involved more and more in the investment space, in the VC space, in the tech space, all this stuff. But yeah, going back to your question, I would say they all have this obsession. They all have, this self-belief that they want to reach the certain goals in their lives. But the number one, I would say, is curiosity. They just have this curiosity and this curious mind to explore other worlds, explore other industries. And this is, I think, one of the best traits a person can have.
I've taken up a lot of your time here, so I really appreciate you coming on. If you have any last words, and then we can wrap things up.
No, just, thank you so much for, giving me this opportunity again. I hope, that this can inspire some people to, go chase their dreams, not to follow, a certain path that, their friends or their family or their colleagues, told them about. Have your own path. And yeah, basically, as my girlfriend told me, I'm too obsessed. And that, I think, is one of the best compliments I ever gotten. So I really hope that people will start getting too obsessed with their goals and achieve them one day.
I love that. Very, very well said, and a great way to wrap up the episode. Appreciate your time once again, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much, Chad. See you soon.